Patrick Mahomes shouldn't play sick. They can't turn the ball over 5 times and win the ball game. But I've watched this team play, and I watched them play the Denver Broncos the first time on Thursday Night Football with Amazon Prime. We sat there on the field, and they beat them. I believe it was 19-9, but the game was a lot closer than I think it should have been. And offensively, Denver wasn't doing a lot, but defensively, they seemed to have answers for Patrick Mahomes in this offense and Travis Kelce. It wasn't their best game. It wasn't their best outing. The same thing could be said against the New York Jets, even with Zach Wilson. They had a chance to win that ball game. Down the stretch, they really had a chance to win that ball game. There were a few calls here and there that didn't go the Jets' way. But this team looked very mortal, and they continue to look mortal. When Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes are on, this team is tough to deal with. But this defense has been playing lights out week in and week out. But a few plays here and there. Russell Wilson didn't throw for a ton of yards, but the ones he did were big plays. He gave Sutton a chance. He gave Jerry Jeudy a chance. And they made big plays for him. Defensively, Baron Browning came to play. Justin Simmons has always been a thorn in the heel of Patrick Mahomes. And so you start to say, hey, there are some weaknesses, more weaknesses to this Kansas City offense than there has been in the past. And it starts with that offensive line. They look very shaky. There's a lot of pressure in his face consistently. And usually he keeps his eyes down the field. He's not looking at the pressure. He's moving around. But now they're starting to get to him. They're forcing fumbles. Valdez-Scantling fumbled the ball. McCole Hardman, who just got back, fumbled the football. Those are the mistakes that usually they can overcome because they got Patrick Mahomes. You know, you're like, oh, well, they still got Patrick Mahomes. They can do this. That wasn't the case yesterday.
Well, you say, what did I see? It's a lot to unpack here, Skip. Starting with Patrick Mahomes. Here's a guy who is turning the ball over at an alarming rate again.
He is.
Right? It just, you know, we get on Josh Allen a little bit about some of the times that he turns the football over, and we point to that. But Patrick is turning the ball over. But Patrick Mahomes doesn't have nearly the amount of weapons that a lot of quarterbacks in the National Football League has. When you talk about Kelce, which is the main weapon, there's no question about it. But when they decide to squeeze Kelce in and out him, play him underneath, high, low, and whatever the case is to discourage Patrick Mahomes from throwing the football, the Sky Moores of the world, he's got to catch that touchdown.
He does.
He cannot allow it to fall off his shoulder pads. He's got to understand how to make that adjustment. Young rookie receiver in Rashee Rice, he's got to catch certain footballs and grow up. Okay, they traded back for McCole Hardman. He cannot afford to fumble. He's got to figure out how to catch balls and make hay. When you talk about just looking at the weapons that he has at his disposal, he doesn't have much. And you're asking him on a continual basis to do a lot. Here's the one caveat for me that's still missing. Eric Bieniemy. I don't care what anybody says. Eric Bieniemy was an important part of what that offense was doing. Remember, they finished #1 in points per game, yards a game, yards passing, and now they're sitting at 12, 19, and 3. That's not what they've been doing in the past. He's no longer there. And you say, well, he wasn't calling the plays. Whether he was calling them, whether he was giving information, whether it was just simple being there, he's not there. And the offense looks different because it certainly isn't Juju Smith-Schuster. Okay, when you talk about guys that have departed from the team, McCole Hardman left, he came back. Everybody else is still intact, except Eric Bieniemy. He's just not there. Now, I don't know what that means. Am I worried about Kansas City long term? No, I'm not, Skip. Because if you go 2 years ago, what did they do? They dropped 1 to Tennessee. You go to last year, they dropped 1 to Indy. Now, all of a sudden, here's another, what people would deem as a bad football team in the Denver Broncos who plays them tough on the defensive side of the ball. As Richard mentioned the first time they played each other, it was a 19-9 bar burner, as we like to call it. Here it is now, and they lose to them. But I'm not worried about Kansas City to say, well, they're not going to win the division. They won't have the 1 or the 2 seed. I'm not ready to go there yet. They just got to clean some stuff up.
Okay. I do agree with Richard that Kansas City just hasn't looked right all year, like right, because they degenerate into Patrick running around and trying to find 87. And they don't have a lot of weapons, but they got one nuclear weapon because he is simply the best pass-catching tight end that I've ever seen. and he gets open better than any tight end I've ever seen, and he has better wavelength and chemistry with Mahomes than any duo I have ever witnessed in all my years. So if to your point, Keyshawn, why doesn't everybody just say you can't have him? We're just going to take him away? But game after game, I think, well, they didn't take him away. They tried, but he still caught, 12 balls for 120 yards. Well, if you can hold him to 6 catches for 58 yards, because remember, last year, Denver had a top 10 defense, and there's still pieces over there that are pretty to very good. So they rose up and clicked for the first time really all year, because that's the same bunch of guys who gave up 70 at Miami that could have easily been 80 or 85 or 90 because they didn't even play in the fourth quarter, the Dolphins starters. Okay, now back to Patrick Mahomes, and Richard brought this up. I never know what to do with it. Did he have the stomach flu? Yes, he did. Did he catch it from his wife and 2 kids? I'm sure he did. How do you gauge it? How do you judge it? Most people say if you're out there, you're playing, you just got to suck it up and play. But obviously, we've all had some stomach flu bug where for about 48 hours, maybe even just 24, you feel like you're going to die. So is that where he was? I have no idea. Does he deserve a pass for yesterday because he wasn't throwing the kind of passes he usually throws? I don't know. Honestly, I've told you before, I wish I had some machine I could hook my hand into and hook it up to Patrick, and I'd say, ooh, that feels terrible. How did he even play? Or maybe it wasn't that bad. I don't know. He said he was coming out of it by game time. Who knows? But the point is, the big picture is that they just haven't looked right all year. And then on the other side, Sean Payton finally just said over the last 4 games, he's just taking the ball out of Russ's hands. Russ doesn't get to cook. He just gets to simmer. Because look at this. You won a home game by going 12 of 19 for 114 yards. That's 4 straight games that Russ has been under 200 yards passing because they're just saying we're just going to balance it up. We'll throw a few passes, but mainly they're going to run for 153 yards, while Kansas City ran for a grand total of 62. And that was the game. So here we got Patrick coughing the ball up. If we could see him real quick, and then you guys can respond. Here's the first where Patrick fumbled at the end of the half, under fire, trying to do too much, trying to hold it. That's the pick first. Okay. Then here's the end of the half. This is the fumble, strip sack, just holding, trying to do too much. And then this is the one where it's desperation at the end of the game. I'll give you that one. He's just trying to make something happen, and nothing happened. Okay, so again, back to you, Keyshawn. You don't have any fear going forward about this team.
No, I don't. Yeah. Look, as I said to you before, Skip, they've had stinkers in their schedule where you scratch your head, the Tennessees, the Indianas, and now all of a sudden the Broncos where you scratch your head. But you also got to understand, like you said, there are defenders that's on this team that was there a year ago. It's not the same scheme. No. It's not the same system. It's different coaches. But there's some familiarity. There's a comfort level that, we're playing against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. We know what to do against this type of ball club. And you mentioned Russ. Well, yeah, what have I always said? If you don't turn the football over as a quarterback and you get about 150 yards rushing and you don't turn that football over as a quarterback, you're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, even if you throw for 114
yards. You're going to win. You're going to win a lot of games. And I know it's boring. I know people want to see Joe Burrow and company just throw the ball all over the lot. But if you can give me a quarterback that is, what was he, 12 of 19 for $150, $120 and 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, and we run for 150, chances are we're going to win the game. And we would take that every single day.
No question. It's a lot of concern. And to your point, Key, the Eric Bieniemy factor is a lot bigger than people were saying. You just look at Washington and Sam Howell. You just watch what they just did against Philadelphia. He threw for 397. You think Sam Howell's just throwing for 397 with whoever as an offensive coordinator? No, at some point you got to start giving Eric Bieniemy credit. He was really tough on them in the offseason. You had all these players coming in to coach. Hey, he's being a little too hard. He's yelling at us. You might want to talk to him. Well, because he knows what it takes to play at a high level to be effective offensively. And that's the kind of standard that he's trying to hold these guys to. And I don't know if Matt Nagy, who's the offensive coordinator now with Kansas City, is holding him to that same standard. So even if he's not calling the plays, Andy Reid's still calling the plays, you still have a lot of input. You still have a lot of effect and influence on the offense. And Matt Nagy, we could talk about his time in Chicago and what happened there, but hasn't necessarily had the track record of being an incredibly effective offensive coordinator, even though he's hired. Andy Reid is still at the forefront, but he's having an influence on his offense and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, very good point. Up next, we got to talk college football because we got to talk Coach Prime and his son at quarterback taking the beating that he did from UCLA the other night. We're going to talk Shedeur and his future up next on Undisputed.
No mercy, no mercy, no mercy.
Thanks for watching, Undisputed fans. Do you want more highlights from the show? Make sure to click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from Undisputed.